We are having a little sound. Okay, good, good.
Okay, so we'll both be talking out of Jamie's mouth, apparently. Welcome,
Okay.
everyone, to
Yes.
Secrets and Lies. What a fun subject.
Yeah. So the question we have for you is: anybody been affected by somebody else's secrets or lies? And of course, we all have.
For me, I was very afraid of other people's disapproval. And so because of that, from the time I was just very, very small, I would either tell white lies or make up things around what I was saying to make it sound better, or lies of omission, or flat out lies. And that was all about trying to make sure that I would be okay in the eyes of other people. And, took that into my adult life and had a lot of times where, it wasn't all the time, but times where I would have to figure out maybe when I had told a lie to someone and then, what did I tell them, and have to backtrack and have to make up even more elaborate lies to make sure everything was okay. And it just was crazy. But Jamie and I both discovered about 20 years ago, but really started practicing it rigorously 15 and a half years ago, this rigorous honesty. And not being honest and being mean, but rigorously honest, being able to say, this happens and I feel these feelings. And so that's a part of the lies thing. But this particular presentation or conversation is more about the secrets that are kept by the people in our lives, maybe our parents, our grandparents, our aunts, our uncles, family of origin, that affect us today.
And so, what to do about it and how to move forward. So we start with Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, and she says, "Oh, I don't know where home is, but it's out there somewhere." And so we start with this because I think we all want to know what's real, where we are really safe, where home is, and how can we, get on that journey to that place, to follow the yellow brick road, if you will.
Yeah, and sometimes, a lot of times, home is not necessarily where our family is or our family of origin is. Oftentimes, home is, what I've discovered is that home is in my heart. And for Jamie and I, home is with us together. And wherever we are, that's where home is. And that's a beautiful gift that we have in our relationship. And so home, what does home mean to you? What does home look like? And was that home, family of origin home, a safe place, or was it full of landmines? You got to be careful for the landmines. So what we want to kind of dive into today is what do toxic secrets look like that come from generations above us, and how to move through that and become healthier so that we don't have to pass things on if we have children to our children, or if we're going to have children to our children, or we don't have to affect other people around us by our, for lack of a better term, dysfunctional thinking.
Exactly. And so how to get our thinking straight and focused. The next slide is right there, number 3.
Got it. Okay. Sorry.
I think twice. There.
Okay.
Okay. So when we are looking for the truth, I think it's really important to set a judgment aside. Things that we perceive as hurts and are difficult for us, we have to slow down and feel the feelings that we're dealing with.
Which is really easier said than done, because a lot of us, including myself, before I really learned about taking a gut check, feeling my feelings, and expressing them appropriately, I couldn't even tell you really what I was feeling besides good, fine, bad, which are descriptors. So I would say good is a descriptor of the bottom side of the wheel that you see on the floor there and under love, and bad is the top side of the wheel. So what intricate feelings are you feeling at this very moment? And taking that gut check, sometimes it's hard. What am I really feeling right now?
Okay, and so last week we also talked about birth order and how the firstborn takes on secrets of the father, or issues. You could replace issues and secrets on this slide. Secondborn take on secrets of the mother, thirdborn of the parents' relationship, fourth of the family unity issues, and then it recycles back. Fifthborn becomes a firstborn kind of thing. There are also a couple other rules about this. If there are more than 4 years between children, that can have a significant change. Yeah, this is wow kind of stuff, exactly. And so, 4 years in between can make a difference. Sometimes miscarriages are a factor, usually if there is an attachment from the mother to the baby that could be lost. That is counted as in the birth order. And so being aware of these things is important, and not that we go looking for them necessarily. I don't think it's important that we go back and dredge stuff up. But if there are things that that are affecting you, then or that have a history in your family, those are things to pay attention to, and maybe do a little extra forgiveness on that.
Well, and for me to look at this more on a personal level, I am a thirdborn. So I took on the secrets of my parents' relationship. I am also 4.5 years younger than my next oldest sibling. And so I take on issues of my father as well, but more the thirdborn issues. So what that looked like for me is my parents had a pretty dysfunctional relationship as far as control and abandonment was concerned. My dad was super controlling, and my mom just acquiesced to that most of the time. And in the family, my mom was be at home, take care of the kids, take care of the home, take care of getting dinner on the table at 6. And my dad was really good at working and bringing home a paycheck and paying for things. But neither of my parents were actually very emotionally connected. And so when I got into a relationship with Jamie, when we got married, I fit right into that perfect role of my mom being the perfect mom, perfect wife, perfect whatever, which is, impossible, but keeping up that facade is exhausting and not who I really was. And so taking care of the whole house, making sure I was working full time, Jamie was in school full time, making sure that we had dinner on the table at 6 o'clock. I made lunch at my work to make sure I was being that good wife, right? And it was exhausting and created some even depression in my life, and not realizing that I was taking on my parents' stuff, because my mom, I thought she was happy being a homemaker, but the reality was she really wasn't. And so I took that on, but then I wasn't happy being in that role. When we had children, I continued in that role, and it was really difficult because I wasn't living into my passion or living into who I really am. I was just living my parents' stuff. And the more we learned about this, the more I was like, whoa, I really need to become my own person. And it really wasn't until, a long time into our relationship that I discovered who I was and what I really loved, and became worthy and whole and all those things with or without Jamie. And that was a really, really big, huge thing for me, because everything was always so about everybody else and their opinion of me. Yes, absolutely. Interject questions. We'll read the text, and or you guys can speak up, and we will respond accordingly, whatever that would be like, text or voice.
So one of the things that we've learned along the way is that from the moment of conception, whatever the parents have going on in their lives, that DNA is committed to the new baby. And then the emotional environment of the mother, of course, is some of the most foundational brain development that happens in that baby. And those things, whatever the mother is feeling, and a crazy thing, whatever the mother is feeling, and one of the crazy things is the father has the most impact on the child. This has been researched and proven, and we believe that's because of the way the mom feels about the dad. So the father, even if he's absent, has a dramatic influx on their on the child's outcome down the road. And so by knowing something about your parents, you can kind of make some guesses and get a little bit of insight as to how your parents' issues may be affecting you today. It's crazy, I told the story of Ariel last week, and I have the video. Thank you, KJ, for videotaping for us. We really appreciate it. That'll be available. We'll figure out how to make that available at the end of today's sessions. Yes. And so that's a really great service that KJ is providing, and I want to say a big thank you.
Okay, so on the topic of being a firstborn, finding out that dad was having affairs at an early age, and then being in relationships where everyone that you're in, they cheat on you. That's what we see a lot of times is the pendulum swing. So with dad having had affairs, going into relationships as his child, saying, okay, I am going to be loyal, I'm going to be honest, I do not want to follow in my father's footsteps. And in that, so swinging to the other side of it, and then because our brains work so crazily and we have our unconscious brain often dictates what we choose when we're not being mindful, choosing someone to hurt you, Shakti, like you were hurt as a child and as your parents in their relationship, as your mom was hurt, choosing someone to do that is such a common thing because you're searching for someone to take that pain away. You're searching for, it's the Dr. Seuss book, Is Your Mama a Llama, or who is, I can't remember the name of the book, but no, it's like, Is Your Mama a Llama? Are You My Mama?
Are You My Mama is the Dr. Seuss book. There's also another one called
Is Your Mama a Llama? So in Dr. Seuss's book, the chicken hatches, or the duck, it's a little whatever animal, and it hatches and it goes around because the mama's not there, and says to the cow, "Are you my mama?" To the pig, "Are you my mama?" And our unconscious is looking for that. Are you going to hurt me like this? Are you going to hurt me like this? And then we get into relationships with people because we have the key to each other's heart, but on the other side of that key is a dagger. And oftentimes we use the dagger inadvertently or on purpose. So with Jamie and I, my dad did not cheat on my mom, but he was emotionally disconnected and abandoning in that emotional connection. And so for Jamie and I sought out someone who would who would abandon me. And in our relationship, the abandonment looked like infidelity. And for Jamie, his mom was super controlling. And so he picked someone who was like that. And the secrets of his parents affected him in other ways. The secrets of my parents, my mom and my grandmother both were sexually abused when they were 5, and I was sexually abused when I was 5. Didn't know about, my mom. I didn't know about my mom or my grandmother until I was an adult. And that seems completely insane. Like, oh, you draw this stuff. But it's, that's how crazy how crazy these things that are passed down from generation to generation are. It doesn't even make sense at times. And why in the world, Shakti, would you choose someone who was going to hurt you that way? That would be ridiculous. And so, and so when we see these things happen, we go, what the heck is happening right now? This makes no sense to me. I'm choosing the thing that I absolutely do not want. And so it's really, really an insane thing that our unconscious does to us. And so learning to be mindful is really important. And learning, as the more we grow and we heal and we move forward, the more we are going to be choosing healthier people to be in relationship with.
Yes. I know it's one of the crazy rules that we work by in our coaching is that you are getting in your life exactly what you're drawing. You choose the people that are going to hurt you. It's crazy. And so if you look at the center of the wheel that we have here in front of us, above shame, we have abandonment, fear, and control. And every relationship that we have has this control abandonment loop. This control abandonment loop is just like third grade. Boy hits girl and he runs away. She chases him, maybe hits him back, maybe doesn't. Either way, she might give up and go the other way. So it starts with boy controlling girl, then abandoning. The girl chases, she's trying to control, and then she abandons. Now we're at abandoned. When both people are at the abandoned place, there's a decision that has to be made. Do we do this over again? Exactly. What we fear, we draw. And so here's the thing. You don't have to control me or abandon me. I just have to be afraid that you will. And if I get afraid that you will, I will react in probably the opposite way. If I'm afraid that you're going to abandon me, I will try to control you. Usually, sometimes we respond the same. If you abandon me, I'm going to abandon you. Ha ha. Whatever. And so that pattern is important to remember as we move through here. Also, take note of the wheel. The 9 feelings in the middle of the wheel are modes. And then the rest of them are feelings.
So the first place that we learn how to feel is in our mother's womb. And so what she's feeling, what she's experiencing, is what we end up foundationally feeling and experiencing later on in life. They did an incredible study on children from 9/11. Did we talk about this last week?
No, we didn't.
So the 9/11 study was they took mothers who were pregnant who lived in New York City during 9/11, and they watched the kids from the time they were born, and they had women whose children were first trimester, second trimester, third trimester in the womb, so they had the spectrum. And what they found was, this 10-year study, is that each child, no matter what trimester, had the results of PTSD and the effects of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. But the ones who were first trimester had fewer effects than the ones who were in the third trimester. So that tells you how powerful what happens when we're in the womb is for our current state of being. And just because there's things that have happened early on does not mean that we are going to have to live with it for the rest of our lives. We can heal through it and not have to stay in that. And like I said earlier, find more healthy relationships around us because we're learning to be mindful and healthier.
Right, and so Annie Murphy Paul wrote a book called The First 9 Months. It has a longer...
Origins is the original.
Oh, yeah.
Is Origins, the first 9 months in the womb.
Okay, that's what it is. Origins, the first 9 months. That's a really fascinating book to profile the studies. They did a really interesting study on Holland under the siege of Germany and how that affected the children that were in that starvation mode in different trimesters. And then did the same thing, like Marla said, on 9/11. And so knowing that that is highly impactful to us and that we are laying down half of what we are ever going to learn by the time we're 2, and that we tend to live out those issues is an important part of moving forward. And what was the thing that was said, the vibrational alignment with emotional issues, right? And so as we move forward here, dealing with these things that are in our lives, realizing that we are the ones that are drawing the relational energy based on that control, abandonment, and fear, now it gives us some empowerment to move forward and take charge of our lives. Okay, we have to change the slide.
So the interesting thing to me when we started learning this stuff was the fact that, and this is the most recent research in the last couple of years, is that whatever's happening at the moment of conception, within moments and at the moment of conception, is that we are taking on the DNA, the secrets, the everything of our parents at conception, which was, I was like, wow, that's insane right there. So everything that they were feeling and experiencing, we take that on. And so let's say that dad's not a part, hasn't been a part of your life. He wasn't, maybe there wasn't a relationship at all and mom got pregnant or he left early or whatever. Dad still has that much effect on your life, which is funny. When we coach people, we have a forgiveness process and we have them write a letter to their biological dad, even if they don't know them and don't have any desire to know them and haven't had any effects from biological dad not being in the picture. Now, when we have people write letters, they don't send them or anything. This is simply for the process of our coaching. And when we have people do that, every single time they will be reading the letter and they will have pretty deep emotion about dad abandoning them when they were either in the womb or just little or early in life, and before they had memory of him. And that always is such, it always causes me to pause, because that type of stuff, dad not being available, shows that even though dad might not be a part of our lives, how much he affects our current situation. And so when we work with couples or even individuals where they have been adopted or don't know their biological father, they have seen in their relationships things that they know about their biological father that just blow their minds. How is that possible? They say, how is it possible that I don't even know this man and he has this much effect on my life?
And so as we look at the information coming out of the research done on DNA, we're finding out that Alzheimer's, 30% of people have a key on their 4th allele that they could have Alzheimer's, and only about 25% of people who have the key actually get the disease. And so why is this? Well, there's a couple, that's the science of it there. From there, we kind of look at it and say, okay, this means that we can activate the keys in our DNA for healing or for disease by our actions, by how we feel about ourselves. And so this kind of gets into, a tough subject. I was passively suicidal for 12 years. And so, thinking about, I'd be better off dead. I was so confused about my behavior and what was going on with me. I loved Marla and our girls tremendously, and I had a series of what I call 20-minute affairs. And I didn't understand why or what was going on with it, and it was tearing me apart. And so I thought often, I had a really big insurance policy. I thought often, well, I did a lot of driving for work, and I thought, well, if I just drive into that truck or drive off of a cliff, everybody would be better off because I'm just messing up so bad. And so, during that time, I was a lot of stress on my body as well. And I was very healthy and exercised regularly. but I just had the symptoms of stress. And so that stress, of course, was I was telling myself, telling my DNA that I didn't want to live. And so it was obliged to say, okay, we'll find a way to make that happen. So that passive suicidal tendency, that thought of, oh, I just don't want to be here, I'm not worth it. It's a touchy one, and people usually up front will deny those kinds of thoughts or feelings. But when we dig into the patterns of depression that people have, ultimately we find that message. We're telling ourselves somewhere, I'm not worthy, I'm not valuable, I'm not welcome. And so I think that's an important key for this Alzheimer's on the fourth allele. Do you want to remember? Do you want to be conscious of your personal history? And are you willing to deal with that? And like the slide said, forgiveness has the final say. Healing is always possible. Our message is that everything is fixable. Everything is fixable, and you can heal from any experience or trauma or DNA inheritance that you have.
So the topic of secrets, there are 4 types of levels of secrets, degrees of secrets. There are the most toxic to the least toxic. And we got this information from John Bradshaw's book, Family Secrets, and which was written, I think, in the 80s. And I'm not even sure it's still in print, but with the amazing gift of the internet, you could probably find it somewhere.
Yeah.
So
I know that Faye bought a book. Is Faye here? I didn't see, but she bought it and has it and has started to read it from last week. So we know it's out there.
So first degree secrets are the secrets that are actions that involve criminal activity, violate life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and theft, arson, sexual crimes, crimes involving emotional or spiritual abuse are examples of first degree secrets. So interesting that, from my perspective, it's fascinating that spiritual abuse is in that list of theft, arson, sexual crimes, and crimes that involve emotional abuse. Because when you look at churches per se, you go to the place of, well, aren't those places supposed to be those, where you heal and you grow and you learn? Well, a lot of people receive a lot of shaming messages from churches, and I'm not here to diss church or religiosity. I'm just saying that because reality is there are people who heal from shame when they go to churches, so it goes both ways. But spiritual abuse is in one of the top worst types of secrets and most toxic, because when you are being abused and it's in the name of God, then it's creates in you this dynamic that says, sorry about that, the FedEx guy came and then we ended up, our little Yorkie started barking here. I apologize for that. So with that spiritual abuse, there's so much shame around. Well, first and foremost, I'm not acceptable to God, so I'm certainly not acceptable to anybody else. And so that explains the spiritual, or the spiritual religious abuse is, we definitely distinguish between spiritual and religious, because we think you can be on a spiritual journey, an amazing spiritual journey, and have nothing to do with religiosity. So, and that's a whole nother conversation for another day, but we can certainly talk about that. So anyway, as far as degree of abuse, those are the number one first degree types of toxic secrets that we have that will be passed down generationally if they're not dealt with. So the second degree secrets, Jamie can talk about that.
Right. So addictions, which may be against the law, but they are killing or destroying the person who has them. They may not be against the law. So we have all kinds of addictions, right? We have addiction to work. We have addiction to being nice. We have addictions to, you know, whatever.
To all sorts
SL,
of
good one.
religion.
Yeah, religion, being right.
Having approval. That was my addiction of choice, was approval addiction, perfectionism.
Right. So we can use anything as a barrier for relationships. And so anything that we choose instead of being present to our relationships now, presently, who we're with, if it gets in the way, our phones are a good example, right? Oh, I'm looking at my phone, I'm doing texts, and I'm trying to have a conversation with Marla, and that never goes very well. And so being aware of being distracted, and of course the obvious ones, the eating disorders, the substance abuse, gambling, anything like that. Those are important to acknowledge and get out there because they will affect our children or our community.
Well, and we've seen over and over again the dramatic effects of what our clients, maybe they have just discovered that the person they thought was their parent wasn't really their biological parent, or just any secrets like that. I have a best friend from college who she thought her whole life growing up till about her mid-20s, maybe late 20s, that her mom was her mom, but her mom was actually her grandmother and her older sister was her mom. And it really messed with her. And she had to work through that because it was such a painful thing to have not been told what was really going on there. And these kinds of things you can mine from your family of origin if you choose to try and figure out what's going on. You can say things, you can ask questions from grandma and grandpa or mom and dad, and here, ask them questions about stories. And when you hear stories that include things like, oh, he was a womanizer, or oh, she liked the bottle, or those kinds of things, there are things that you can figure out just by asking your family of origin to tell stories about their childhood or about things that they know about their grandparents and that kind of thing.
So if there are no questions about second degree secrets, we'll move on to third degree. Third degree family secrets are anything from being enmeshed or totally disconnected. We see this sometimes. There's often some, especially a stepchild can be made into like the Cinderella story, right? And it happens so often where, the older sister that's from a previous marriage from, say, the father, and then the new mom and she has a couple of children, she kind of puts the burden of taking care of some of the other kids in the house and those kinds of things on that child. And so that is a kind of dynamic that needs to be exposed so that you can kind of sort through the feelings that you have as you have been a part of that, either as the child that was made responsible or as one of the other children that maybe got taken care of by an older sibling or a half-sibling that maybe wasn't so happy about taking care of you.
Another one of the type 4 secrets that's important that's not listed here is traumatic birth. If you were a preemie or there was some other traumatic birth taking place when you were born, maybe with Jamie's experience, his mom was so highly medicated that they ended up pushing Jamie out. His mom couldn't even do that. And so that was a traumatic birth for him. And our daughter, Ariel, she had a traumatic birth. The nurse, because I was such a great codependent and an approval addict, and I was, 22 at the time, the nurse said, don't push, the doctor's not here yet. And so Ariel was crowning in the birth canal, and so she wasn't breathing inside my womb, and she wasn't out, and she was smashed in the birth canal, and she came out not breathing, black and blue, and what that created later, we learned this information, and when she was about 3, she was kind of an angry kid, and she would just get really angry, and she would beat up her older sister, who was a lot taller than her and a lot more agile, and she would just beat her up. And Kayla would let her, but then Ariel would, you know, totally, she'd bite and these things. So we discovered that unexplained anger comes from traumatic birth. And so I sat her on my lap and I told her the story of her birth. And I just said, we love you so much. We're so happy that you were born, and we're so happy you're here, and you are so precious to us, and we're so sorry that happened. And she said, I don't know why, Mommy, but that makes me want to cry. And she sobbed for 20 minutes. And from that point forward, she did not have that kind of anger anymore, and she didn't beat up her sister. And that's how powerful those kinds of things are. So you can look at your birth, or the birth of someone important to you in your life, and you guys can talk about it. And was it traumatic? And might there be things that have come from that traumatic birth?
So I'm having trouble changing the slide, so be a little patient with us here.
That's the first. Can you click on it here? Technical difficulties. So the important part about the talks, the secrets, is that we do some mining. If we don't really know, but we know we've had effects of secrets that we're talking about here, we can go and mine and see where those might have come from. And so let's see. I'm having a hard time reading. Okay. What if you talk and they aren't ready to hear it? Yeah. That's something to be very cautious of. There are a lot of people who, parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles, who aren't ready to have a conversation and aren't able to hear the things that you would like to talk to them about and have that loving, connected conversation with them. And so the best thing to do is you can approach it in a roundabout way and just talk about, like I said, telling stories and that kind of thing. But if someone's not ready and you've had that experience with them, that you approach them and they just hurt you where you've already been hurt, or trigger shame because they're not willing to have those conversations with you, it's best to, unless you're ready to dive into that pain again, it's best to not go into that, let me rephrase that. It's probably better to be careful about having that conversation with people that aren't safe. And that is really painful. You either choose to not have the conversation, or you choose to engage in the conversation and know that they're not going to necessarily be a positive outcome, and let go of the outcome and say what you need to say. It's a complicated situation. And it's true. Sometimes they are never ready. And we've had that experience. When we first started learning these things, back in 1995, we were so excited, and we were talking to all of our family and friends about this, and we were like, oh, it's the best thing since sliced bread, you need to do this, and we're having so much healing in our lives, blah, 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 and they pretty much shut us down and were angry at us for even mentioning that they might need to do something like this. So that wasn't safe for us, but we didn't know that at the time. We were just so excited about what was going on.
And so, yeah, Marla we went over that a little bit last week. You have to be careful about bringing these conversations to people, especially family members, especially older, your parents or your grandparents or aunts and uncles. I've had several conversations that did not go very well, especially in the beginning when I was so excited about, this information. And I told my mom, and in 17, I said, Mom, you have to try this. There's a program in your area that I'd like you to try. And 17 years later, she still reminds me of that I told her that she needed therapy. And she was not happy about that. So yeah, you have to be patient and go slow. Yes, and even ask for forgiveness and move forward the best you can. So yeah, this thing about so shame. And shame is the reason why shame is in the middle of the top of the wheel is because it ends up tainting a lot of our feelings and giving us, kind of controlling us. And so when we feel guilt, so shame comes to us in two different ways. First of all,
Right.
oh yeah, we'll end with this slide here today. Well, we have two more slides, so we'll get all of them in here. But recognizing shame is really important. It comes in two different ways. First of all, guilt that is unresolved, and the time frame that we are told, so many years ago was 72 hours. If you don't deal with guilt for 72 hours, it becomes shame. It becomes toxic. Guilt is an excellent feeling. It tells us we've done something wrong or that we not need to take care of something. All the feelings on the north side, by the way, we call it north side and south side. All the feelings on the north side are good except for shame itself. Guilt says, I did something wrong. Shame says, I'm bad. And so when we find an issue, whether it be around food or relationships or sexuality, when we find something that's keying us in shame, that's masking what we can really be aware of, so that, well, here's the warning that we have for you.
Lady White Falcon, here's the answer.
Yeah.
It was coming.
So what the goal is in this process is to drain the shame out of the center of the wheel and change it to love, so that we can have a love sandwich in the middle of our feelings, right? So when we drain this toxic shame out, it becomes love. Yes. It's a powerful thing. And so if we have a love sandwich, and forgiveness being a part of love is really not so much a sandwich as it's just a better description of what love is. When we can forgive others and forgive ourselves, suddenly now we're free to see a bigger story and a better party. There's a lot more to what's going on around us in our heart when we make room for it. Our hearts being bigger on the inside than they are on the outside. When we get rid of some of the junk that stops us, we are able to, see more solutions, slow down the conversations, and become more connected to those around us, and ask for what we truly want. And that's the goal here. So that we can ask for what we want. We don't always get it, but at least we'll get it. It certainly won't get it if we don't ask, right? So learning to ask for our needs to be met healthfully. Okay, so how do we ask for our needs to be met healthfully? Is that the question, Maza?
Or Musa, however you say your name. You asked how, and so what were you referring to with that?
Well, I'll take it as how to ask for your needs to be met healthfully. And so, oftentimes we are limited by our abilities to communicate our desires.
How do we cope with all the shame? How do we cope with all this shame we experience and change it to love?
And that is the magic middle of the wheel, forgiveness. We begin by forgiving those closest to us, our parents, our siblings, our exes, our current spouse, and moving into forgiving ourselves. And as we forgive ourselves and let ourselves off the hook, we then now have we are empowered by love to have peace, power, and joy in our lives, and then we see more options and have more freedom. Let me see. I took a class one time that said to say, I have a request, which means to offer a person may or may not.
Means the other person may or may not.
Right. Exactly.
Give it to us.
Right. But again, this forgiveness process that we're talking about, we don't share with other people until we have it solid in our hearts. And one of the reasons why we don't talk about boundaries earlier in this process is because boundaries really are a matter of heart. And boundaries are part of asking for getting your needs met healthfully. But you really have to make room in your heart for feeling worthy, respected, valued, important, everything in that green wedge of the wheel, so that you can now feel confident in asking for those needs to be met without any guilt. Or, sometimes people say, I can't ask for it, because then they would just do it to, because I ask.
They won't do it.
Or they won't do it. Or, and the truth is, if Marla asks me something and I can make her happier by doing it, and it doesn't affect, my boundaries, it isn't, something that
or your ethics,
or my ethics,
like
or my core beliefs, then, I'm more than happy to do it. I love it when she asks. It's not. I think it's a part of being in a loving relationship to know each other's desires, and to be willing to try to meet them healthfully.
Yeah, and one of the very best things to do before you go and have a conversation with someone, if you know that that's what you want to do, and you're strong enough to do that, make sure that you are going into it releasing expectations. Release the expectation of how they might respond or what they might say. No matter what they say, you are going into it and you're strong enough to hear it and not have it hurt you, like we said, not have it hurt you again where you've already been hurt. And Ari, I love what you say about true friendship is listening compassionately and creatively in hidden silences. That's beautiful, because it's true. It's Jamie always calls it the silent movie. When you you just turn the sound off completely and you look at what's happening and the actions and the body, because, words are just a tiny part. There's only 7% of what we're expressing. Our body language and those kinds of things express so much more. And if we can be in a space of openness, even with our palms open, and love, we can, have our own forgiveness. We can listen compassionately and creatively and hear those things and understand deeper where people are coming from.
Yeah, that's a beautiful quote. That's a good one by John O'Donohue.
Yeah, I love that.
Any other questions?
How to deal with
Okay, yeah. So if it's a secret, how do you deal with it?
Good
okay,
question.
That is a good question.
Well, because Jamie and I, we kept all these things happened in our lives, and we were like, where in the world did this come from? This, holy cow, And so being able to say, okay, we know this came from somewhere, but we don't necessarily know where it came from. So then moving through that, what that looks like.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so, like Pyro is saying here, this genetic memory can come forward, and that's why we don't dig around in our pasts for these secrets. If we know something is up, then that's something that we can work from. What we say is, let's start with what you're experiencing
and what you're feeling.
What you're feeling. That's why we have this wheel. This wheel is the answer to the traumas that we have inherited, whether they be in our own lives or in our ancestors' lives. And so let's start with the feelings. Start tracking your feelings, and then let's dig into that forgiveness and find what we can to move forward.
We have when we coach people, one of the things that happens is, yes, there are people that have passed or there aren't a part of their lives anymore, and so not being able to have those conversations and discover some of these things. But we have them write letters anyway, and there's things that come out of the letters, and in the letters they do express 3 core feelings about each thing that either an event or something that they remember. And so we'll take those 3 feelings and we'll say, okay, think about those 3 feelings. Mush them together like Cold Stone. It's not 31 flavors. You don't just pick one of the flavors or 3 of them separately. It's Cold Stone, the Cold Stone Creamery, where you take these different flavors and you mix them together. Those 3 feelings are a feeling package. And so we ask them to take those 3 feelings and think about the very first time, as early as they can remember in their lives, when they felt those 3 feelings together. And people always go back to a very early age. And we talk about that experience and what that was like. Sometimes they go back to an age and they don't know what was going on. They don't know the story, but they know the feeling. And then we help them grow up from that stage to today. And they come back with, you know, a week or two later and say, it's so, or even in that moment, I feel so much, almost always in that moment, I feel so much relief. I feel like a weight's been lifted off of my shoulders. And so it's amazing how our minds work and our unconscious mind works. The more we clean that up by doing these things, the more we are able to heal through these generational issues and secrets and lies and be healthier and give that to the people around us and to our children. Gift them our presence, being present to the present as opposed to ruminating about the past or being afraid of the future. So anxiety is about the future. Fear is about the past. Fear can be about the present too and the future, but oftentimes our fears in the present come directly from what we experienced in the past, even if we don't remember it. And anxiety comes with being afraid of what might happen in our future.
All right. So, any questions or comments as we close here? Our time is running short. This can be heavy stuff. We understand that this takes some time to digest. That's why we did the introduction last week and then followed through this week. And okay, so one quick question. So anxiety comes from
the past or the future. It's anxiety is what is created when we're afraid of what's going to happen in our future. It could be moments in the future or a long time in the future. That's where anxiety comes from, is ruminating about the fear of the future, a fear of what could happen in the future.
And so as far as the packages at passionprovokers.com, we can work in Skype, obviously in Second Life or in person. And we can just feel free to private message me and we can talk about the details. Okay, well, thank you for attending today's Empowered Forgiveness, Secrets and Lies. We will be posting the videos here on our Passion Provokers website probably this week. Thank you, KJ, for recording, and Delane for doing that particle show to start with. That was fun. A little incentive to get here early. And Ari for playing. Thank you for playing. It's a real privilege to have Ari here, a talented musician and fantastic person. Yes.
The other thing, you have a question? Awesome. Thank you, Barbie. She took notes, and so if anybody wants that, she missed the first 20 minutes, but she can pass along the note card to anybody who's interested in that. Okay, so the question is, what if we think we uncovered all secrets there were, but still feel like we got trouble dealing with the behavior related to them?
Right. Then, so
layers of the onion there.
You know what? I think what we'll do is we'll address that in detail next week. It will be a shorter session next week. We have a scheduling conflict that we couldn't avoid, so it'll be about 30 minutes. We'll do 20 minutes of lecture and then have 10 minutes for conversations. But I'll give you the quick answer now, and then we'll go over it more. And that is, as you see these symptoms, you address the feelings directly. And so the secrets themselves aren't as important necessarily. You're very welcome, by the way. The secrets aren't as important as the symptoms that you're dealing with, right? So we'll, as we dig into the tracking your feelings and seeing the patterns, we can address that next week. Good question, though. It's a really good question because it does get confusing. Very, very welcome. All right. Oh, that was fun.